Hello and welcome to TargetOne channel. In this session, we are going to discuss about the first phase to start a project, which is the project initiation phase. The initiation phase is the beginning of the project, and in this phase, the idea of the project is explored and elaborated using two project management processes. Talking about the agenda, we will first take a look at an overview of initiation phase, and then we'll understand the two project management processes under the initiation phase process group. That is to develop a project charter and stakeholder identification. And finally, we'll understand what is required to kick off a project. During the project initiation phase, there are certain questions to be answered, such as why this project, right? What is the reason we are starting a particular project? Is it feasible? That means, is it doable? What are possible partners in this project? And what should the results be? Like, what should be the end deliverable be? What are the boundaries of this project? As in, what are the things which are outside the scope of the project? Also, it makes sense to explicitly agree on the type of project that is being started. I mean, you need to identify whether this is a research and development project, also known as R&D project, a project that will deliver a prototype or a proof of concept, a project that will deliver a working product. So such kind of questions needs to be identified in the initiation phase. During the project initiation process, you will also need to secure any necessary approvals or sponsorship, figure out which resources are needed to see the project through to the end, and put together the best team for the job. Moving on to our next topic, that is to develop a project charter. So before we understand how to create or develop a project charter, let us understand what is a project charter. So a project charter is a document that authorizes the existence of the project and gives authority to the project management to use the money and resources for the project. A project charter, as you can see on the screen, contains project objectives, success criteria, and high-level requirements for the project. A project charter also includes constraints, high-level risks, assumptions, a project called experience. The project charter is signed off by the project sponsor or senior management. Talking about the next process, that is stakeholder identification. Let's first understand what is a stakeholder. Stakeholders refers to all people or organization involved in a project. They may be internal or external to a project, and they can positively or negatively be affected by the result of the project. Stakeholders can also influence a project positively or negatively. Their influence needs to be managed by the project manager in order for the project to be successful. Let's now discuss about the major stakeholders on a project. First on the list is the sponsor, who supports the project and provides resources. He or she is also a spokesperson to speak with higher management. For problems or issues that project manager don't have authority to solve, a project sponsor can solve those. Next we have is customer. So customer are the people who will receive the final product of the project. Next is the project team, which involves the project manager and a group of people who would be working to deliver the project objectives. Then we have the project management staff. This is the team who is responsible for performing project management activities such as scheduling, budgeting, reporting, risk management, etc. Next on the list we have is project staff, who are responsible for producing project deliverables. Then we have the experts. These are subject matter experts who help out in project management planning and help during actual execution of the project. Then we have sellers, who are external companies, that is contractors or suppliers, who provide resources or equipments needed by the project. Last but not the least are business partners. These are external companies who may have special relationship with the organization and may provide training, support or installation. Moving on to classification tools, which is used to group stakeholders in terms of authority, level, impact and requirements. Examples of classification tools are Influence or Impact Grid and Salience Model, which we will discuss in detail in the upcoming sections. Now let's try to understand the first classification model, which is the Influence or Impact Grid. The Influence or Impact Grid contains 4 quadrants, as you can see on the screen. By definition, influence is the level of involvement the person has, and impact is the ability of the stakeholder to bring out a desired change. This could be during project planning or project execution. For example, a stakeholder that has ability to set deadlines and hence the project schedule will be classified as high impact. This stakeholder would also have the ability to detect the length of the critical path. Each quadrant gives you an indication of the level of stakeholder management that you will have to employ. The following questions can help you gauge the level of influence and impact of stakeholder have on the outcome of your project. First question would be, what are the responsibilities of the stakeholders? As in what their project role would be and what roles and responsibility they will play as part of the project. Next, like what do stakeholders expect from the project and how they will benefit? Are there any conflicting interest that the stakeholders may have with the project? How committed is the stakeholder of the project? Is he or she willing to commit tangible resources? What are the consequences of not managing this stakeholder? Can stakeholders influence others who are the dominant stakeholders? Are there any threat posed by the stakeholder? By using this matrix, you can determine which stakeholder to manage closely and which stakeholders to put minimum effort in. This helps you to channel your time and energy on the stakeholder that can make or break your project. In addition, it will help you create a communication and stakeholder strategy. Now let's discuss about the next classification model, which is called as Salience Model. So Salience Model uses 3 parameters to categorize stakeholders, such as power, legitimacy and urgency. Power is the ability project stakeholders has to influence the outcome of an organization deliverables or a project. Legitimacy is the authority, level of involvement project stakeholders have on the project. Urgency is the time expected by the project stakeholders for response to their expectation. There are few sections identified on the diagram. We will talk about them one by one. First is the A section, as you can see on the diagram, which refers to core category stakeholder. These are critical project stakeholders. As project manager, you need to provide focused attention to these stakeholders. B section refers to dominant stakeholder. Such project stakeholders have power and legitimacy, but do not have urgency. You should focus on their expectations, but always there is not a lot of urgency. Next is C section, which are dependent stakeholders. As per Salience model, these project stakeholders have no real power on the project. However, they need to be managed because they can quite easily choose to align themselves with other project stakeholders and hence influence your project. Next is D section, which is dangerous stakeholders. Appropriately named classification. These stakeholders have power and agency but no legitimacy. Imagine a very senior person trying to force her views on the outcome of your project without really being part of it. A project manager needs to keep such stakeholders appropriately engaged and satisfied. Next is E section, which are latent stakeholders, possibly the best category project stakeholders. These stakeholders only get into the project if there is something that has gone horribly wrong with it. Over communication of micro level details with them is also not a great thing to do. Next is F section, which are demanding stakeholders. Such stakeholders in the Salience models are people that always seem to think that their work needs your attention. If you spend too much time and effort on these stakeholders, you won't actually gain too much project mileage. There are other more important people to work with. Next is the G section on the diagram, which are the discretionary stakeholder, another wonderful classification of project stakeholders. You give them regular status updates and they will be happy. And finally, you have the H section, which is the non-stakeholders. These people are not stakeholder in the project. Investing your time and effort on such people will not help you shape the outcome of your project in any manner. By now you might have understood that stakeholder identification is a process in which all people and organization involved and impacted are documented into something called a stakeholder register. This stakeholder register is revisited and reassessed throughout the project due to two reasons. First, the new stakeholders might be added during the course of the project, and second point is some existing project stakeholder may have missed during the initial identification. When reviewing and completed register, the project manager should be able to answer questions such as how many stakeholders does the project have, how can each stakeholders be contacted, which stakeholders influence the entire project, which stakeholders influence only certain segments of the project and which segments, what are communication preferences of each stakeholder, what are the communication frequency preferences of each stakeholder, are there connections or interdependencies among the stakeholders. Once we have the project charter and stakeholder register in place, there is a project kickoff meeting between the project sponsor, stakeholders and project team to share project goals and deliverables. And further we will discuss about the team structure, as in who is part of the team and what is their respective role on the project. We will also share what tools we would be using for communication and collaboration, how requirements will be tracked and worked upon, and what is the technology stack, also known as tech stack, that the team would work upon. We would finally discuss and share the project cadence, as in whether we will be connecting on daily basis, also known as stand-ups, or weekly meetings, and share the team what is the project schedule the team is expected to work towards. This brings end to our session about project initiation phase. If you have any questions or feedback, do drop it in the comment section, and until next time, please take care and thank you for listening.